From the Ticats Audio Network, this is Tiger Cats Game Day with Courtney Stephen and Mike Daly.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Tiger Cats Game Day on the Ticats Audio Network. It is Friday. It is Friday Fun Day, Friday Night Football, and the Ticats are opening up Tim Hortons Field for the season against the Montreal Alouettes at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. And this one is an Eastern Division battle. It's the third game of the season for the Ticats, and this is one that they need. I mean, there's no must-win games this early in the season, but it would feel great to get one in the win column, and tonight could be the night that they finally get that. Mike, how are you feeling going into this Friday night football face-off?
You know, it's funny, Corey, as you say that, it's not a must win or anything like that. The nice thing about the Ticat fans is with the slow starts that they're used to, this is, nothing new. So I don't think there's anybody in Tigertown that's overly worried about the 0-2 start or how it is at the beginning of the season, just because they've been through this already, right? And it'd be nice to see a quick turnaround here at home, opening game at home to see them kind of take Montreal and take them to task and kind of, put them where they should be is in the L column. But I'm excited for this one. Friday night football, it's always nice, that first night in the donut box. So looking forward to it, and, let's dive into it a little bit. Absolutely.
And as mentioned, the Ticats right now, they're standing at 0-2 with defeats against Winnipeg and Toronto. Montreal, they're 1-0, and they beat Ottawa in their season opener 19-12. But then they had a bye week, so they're coming into this game with a little bit fresher legs, probably a little bit more time in the film room to help extend that training camp vibe. So they're coming into this one full steam ahead, looking to advance in that Eastern Division. And the Ticats are on the opposite end of it. They had a short week, so they played on Sunday, playing again 5 days later on a Friday. Have you ever really let that get into your mental in the way that you prepared, or how did you change your preparation from the stark contrast of coming off of a bye to playing a short week where you only have 5 days?
Yeah, there's this weird balance that you try to figure out, early on in your career. You don't really understand it, but as you kind of get, a little more games under your belt, where you can almost over prepare sometimes. And especially with the Ticats, how they, finished that game in Toronto, some turnovers, didn't really go the way they want. You just kind of want to get that next game under your belt as quick as possible. I think when you look at a short week like this that the Ticats have, you can't game plan a ton. You know what I mean? You can talk about it in film, talk about it in meetings, break down what Montreal does just based off their one game that they showed. But at this point, it's about going out there, executing what you do, and then just doing it a little bit better, right? We look at one thing that is a huge factor for the Ticats right now and the challenge of this year, and that's penalties, right? They have the most in the league at 24, and it's alarming, but it's one of those things in court, you and I both know from that locker room, that's going to get fixed quick, right? And if it doesn't get fixed quick in the first 2 weeks, well, then you're going to start seeing changes in that depth chart. And everybody within that building knows that. So I think this game on that short week, you just kind of roll out and execute a little bit better than what you did in that Toronto game. But obviously the caveat of that is now it is with Matthew Schultz, right?
Yeah, and speaking of changes in the depth chart, there are a few people up, a few people down, and let's just dive into that a little bit. Starting on the quarterback position, Matthew Schultz, he will be getting the start at quarterback. Proven guy, and we'll dive into exactly what he brings to the table and why he's a threat. But then, of course, in front of him, there's a lot of important guys who defend him or protect him, and that's the offensive line, which has been really shaken up. You've got the rookie Kendrick Sartor starting at the right tackle, and he's fresh in there, right next to another guy who's fresh, who would be Dayton Black, the first draft pick for the Ticats this year. So when you have a lot of new faces, Of course, with some other old faces returning, like Lawrence Woods III getting back into the mix. Richie Sindani, who's a new face, but a veteran in the league in his 5th year. When you have a lot of new players entering a lineup, guys that just haven't had a chance to play well together, or especially at a core group like the offensive line, like how important could it possibly be? How much more important could it possibly be to start the game and build some momentum? Because it seems like it's a crossroads where you could start out the game, and if it starts off rocky, it could become a slippery slope, or you could get a couple of good plays and string together some confidence, and that could do a lot to help guys gel. If you're offensive coordinator Tommy Condell, knowing you've got Richie Sindani, you've got a new right tackle, a new right guard, you've got a lot of things shifted, a new quarterback, how are you calling this game to give these guys the best chance to succeed?
Yeah, it's tough, right? Two first-year starters going in on the O-line, one of those positions where experience trumps all, right? But I think when you look at, the question with what Tommy should do here is there's a bunch of different things, but having the benefit of Matthew Schultz being able to use his legs like he does and run around, I think you can kind of catch this defense off guard, right? In a Montreal defense that is playing well this year based on the one game that we saw. Pretty much won them that last game in Ottawa. But I think what you can do is you can kind of move Matthew Schultz around. You'll see some of those runs that we saw last year that were really successful with Schultz, some of that misdirection run, a receiver running in front of his face, and then he's either handing it off or pulling it and following some of his offensive linemen. I think you're going to see a lot of that stuff, but it's definitely not going to be the typical that you see with Bo Levi where it's a drop back pass, read everything. Number one, just because Matthew Schultz, he can run around so well, you're going to utilize that. And then number two, with those two new offensive linemen in there, you want these to be quick hitters and to catch the defensive line off guard as opposed to just sitting back there playing patty cake, essentially, with the defensive linemen of Montreal. But Court, Richie Sindani well, and obviously he's coming back from injury, but he gets pushed right into that starting lineup. What can Ticat fans expect from him? From they watching him in Calgary, but they don't really understand Richie Sindani. What's he going to bring?
Well, Richie is one of those guys who he's just reliable. He's a consistent role player who's going to be able to contribute on those key second downs where you might need 6, 7, 10 yards, 12 yards, and you throw the ball to him, you expect it to be caught and he'll catch it. Now, the cool thing about Richie is that he's also going to stay on the field for third down, and he can play special teams. And as a Canadian in this league, you know it like I know it, man. That's really where you can make a mark and really give yourself a spot on the roster, because the more you can do, the longer you can stay and the more you can contribute as a whole. So he gives us that versatility, us being the Ticats, as another player on the roster that can do more than one thing. And that's helpful because this wide receiver core for the Ticats, I think, might be the best position group of all of the position groups. And, that's saying something when you look at what's going on in that linebacker room and what's going on that defensive line room. I really think the wide receiver core is very impressive with emerging guys like Terry Godwin. Of course, you have the veteran and the big playmaker, the home run hitter, Tim White, and then Duke Williams, who he's a designated American or something like that. I'm still trying to figure out what that means. But then, Keandre Smith, an emerging talent, Tyler Ternowski, and Tyreek McAllister, who they seem to be very excited about. I'm not sure, haven't seen much from him, haven't been able to watch any film of him yet, but with him being thrust into the lineup as well, it will be exciting to see what he brings. He wears number 35, which typically wouldn't be a receiver number, so I'm wondering if he's got some Dembski-esque, I'm going to run the ball from the slot type of plays in the playbook there. But just rounding it out, Richie is going to give you consistency. And I think for a team that's in a position that the Ticats are in right now, that's what you want. You want somebody who's going to catch the ball. You want somebody who's going to make their block. And you want somebody who's going to do exactly what they are supposed to do, because it's the little things right now that are going to be making the difference. It's staying on the field, it's taking care of the ball, and it's finishing with points when you get within striking distance. He caught 2 touchdowns in the preseason. if he can do a little bit more of that, I think that's more than his fair share of contribution to what this team's looking for.
Yeah, and you know what, Court, you touched on it perfectly. It's the finishing with points on those drives, right? And when you look at that last game, that against Toronto, that's another area where you just try to focus on, okay, let's not have any of these turnovers down there, especially let's throw that ball away, let's take a sack, whatever it's got to be, finished with points. But I do want to bring back up Duke Williams, because what he's been doing is pretty impressive, right? He had 6 catches over 100 yards again. He's that big body that he went up there against Toronto in a couple of the throws and just made those fearless catches, right? The digs where it's, 12 yards, 13 yards right behind the backers, and he's running into the teeth of the defense. And I'll tell you what, I've seen it too many times where a ball goes up a little bit too high and you have the nice ribs exposed, and receivers get a little bit nervous about hitting those ribs, right? But not Duke. He went up there. He came down with that thing. Huge second down conversion receiver. So I'm really impressed with him, and kind of looking for another big game and be able to help Matt Schultz out in this game against Montreal.
Yeah, speaking of Matt Schultz, he's going to be a focal point of this game for us, the people who are analyzing the game, for the fans watching the game, trying to see where does this team go from here after so much hype being made about Bo Levi, and now it's another person in the driver's seat. He's going to be the point of emphasis for Northrop's defense, because they know that if they can affect him, then they're going to affect the outcome of this game. So just looking at Matt Schultz and who he is, 6-year quarterback. He spent 4 years in Montreal, so that's a club that he's familiar with. He came over in 2022, and if I was to describe his game, he's got poise. He's got above average accuracy. He threw for over 71% last year. And last year, he actually took the most attempts that he's had in his career. He was 85 out of 119. And so 4 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He's just a guy who comes in as like a great relief pitcher and just gets the job done. And I think that's exactly what you want, especially because he's not one-dimensional. He had 26 rushes, 152 yards. That's 5.4 yards per carry, which translates to him being dangerous. Because if you sit back and try and make him pick you apart, usually that means you're going to be in some kind of zone. And what are zones susceptible to? Zones are susceptible to run. So not only can he run the ball, but when you got him and James Butler at that mesh point, confusing the defensive ends and the linebackers as to who's actually going to take the ball and run with it, that's a different dimension that I can almost guarantee Tommy Condell is going to weave into this game plan. So that RPO, the quick game, the draws, the QB power, I expect to see all of that, because it's going to give Matt and it's going to give this offensive line a little bit of momentum, a little bit of confidence heading into this game, because that's playing towards their strengths. Have you ever seen a quarterback come into a game who was not the main guy and really just dominate or play over the expectations? Is it really weird for that to happen, or is that something that you've seen in pro football before?
Yeah, it happens all the time, right? These guys are all pros. They prepare like they're going to start every single game, and Matthew Schultz is no different, and actually probably a little bit better than most of the backups in the league right now. You saw what happened last year, right? With Dane, when Matt Schultz came in for Dane, played awesome, right? Was a very effective quarterback. You see it all the time, but I think you're absolutely right with James Butler and Matthew Schultz back there. Like, personally, I'm not nervous at all, right? Like, when I hear Matthew Schultz is starting, and I'm sure all Ticat fans are with me here, it doesn't make you nervous at all, because we've seen what he's able to do. Now he has somebody explosive and able to make a bunch of people miss, like James Butler. You said it perfectly. It's going to be this misdirection stuff. Tim White maybe getting a couple pitches, maybe a jet sweep coming across the face of Matt Schultz, help that offensive line out and make that Montreal defense just kind of spin their head around in circles to try to figure out who's got the ball, right? 10 yards later, figure it out, first down. So I'm looking forward to it, and I'm not nervous at all with Matt Schultz back there. I'm actually excited to see what he can do. Where I am going to be focusing my attention is on that other side of the ball, right? Because the Ticats defense that we're all used to is struggling a little bit this year, right? They've given up 100 yards in the past 2 games rushing, which we know that's not normal for this Ticats defense, right? Especially Mark Washington, that's a staple. So when you talk about the short week and we talked about really focusing on executing what you do better, that's going to be their focal point, right? Besides the penalties, everybody's going to then break off and go into offensive meeting rooms, defensive meeting rooms. And that's what's going to be getting talked about in that defensive meeting room is, listen, we got to be able to stop the run so that we're not in these second and third situations where now we can't dial up specific pressures that we drew up, specific coverages that we drew up to try to beat this team that's across from us. We have to now play both the run and the pass. And it's just difficult, right, Court? Like when you're looking at it and you're in 2nd and 3, you got to call that thing about as vanilla as you can because it's just too easy to get 3 yards.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the stats that we saw in the Ticats giving up above average rushing totals, that comes down to them playing from behind in these games, really. And the offense is on the other side, really trying to bleed clock and protect the rock. And it's when you're in those positions now as Mark Washington, you're dialing more pressures maybe, or maybe you're doing some gap cancellation. And those things, they tend to have, if you're not perfect, you're going to get a little bit of a gash there. So I can understand why they got into these situations, but if they want to take matters into their own hands, the key for this defense is they need their theme needs to be put the fire out. Whenever there's a sudden change and the offense turns the ball over, it doesn't matter if it's in negative or positive territory. It doesn't matter translation. It doesn't matter if it's in the opponent's end of the field or in your end of the field. It doesn't matter where the ball is when it's turned over or if there's a big play that suddenly something changes in the game. You have to go out on the field like the SWAT team or like the EMS or like a firefighter and just find the emergency, calm everybody down, spray your little fire extinguisher, put the fire out, and then go back to the bench so the offense can resume as they were. If the opponent gets a turnover and translates that into points, those momentum swings are huge, especially because instead of you getting 3, they get 3, that's a 6-point swing. Instead of you getting 7 and them getting 3, that's a 10-point swing, right? So if they can put the fire out, this defense can take matters into their own hands to some degree. It is a great team game, as they always said, and they will continue to say. But I'm looking for them to take the lead here because this is Hamilton. Hamilton is a defensive team. They're not built on this is a reputation. You can't go back in time and take Angelo Mosca out of the Ticats reputation. The Ticats are not built on the glitz and the glam. They're supposed to be tough and they're supposed to be really gritty on defense. So I would love for them to take that on, and especially against a quarterback like a Cody Fajardo, who's a guy who's going to give you opportunities to force turnovers. Why do I say that? Because he's a mobile quarterback who, yes, he will take the ball into his own hands. And as a defender, who do you think you have the most chance of getting the ball away from? The quarterback who, when he's running with it, he might be thinking about throwing the ball or he might not be holding it as securely, or a running back. A running back holds the ball for a living. A quarterback throws the ball for a living. So when Cody Fajardo's outside of the pocket, I want to see this Ticats defense take advantage of it. You've played against Cody Fajardo. Tell me what his weapons are like and tell me what his toolkit's like. What does he pose as a threat to this defense?
Yeah, I think when you look at Cody Fajardo, it's one of those things where he was most effective, almost exactly how we were talking about Matthew Schultz, where he's moving around and running. Right? I think when you look at him, he's very effective at running, getting those different kind of plays involved, like the read option where, quarterback snaps the ball, looks at defensive lineman that's unblocked, and it's pretty much, hey, defensive lineman, pick if you're going to take the running back or pick if you're going to take me. If you take me, I'm going to hand it off to the running back. If you take the running back, I'm going to pull it. Maybe I'll be able to have some receiver options downfield. That's when he's pretty effective. But with that, and we saw this against Ottawa, comes those opportunities for, like you said, Court, to be able to throw it up there because he's getting pressure in his face, right? He's holding the ball a little bit longer because he's trying to rush around, extend some plays. But he's also going to get sacked a lot because what he does is he gets back there, and Cody has a tendency to hold onto the ball and wait until a receiver's open, right? Now that sounds a little bit crazy, but the good quarterbacks in the league, they'll throw the ball before that receiver even makes a break or looks open through anticipation. Cody's one of these type of guys that if you watch him play, it's more of a I'll wait till they're open. Oh yeah, there they are. Now I'll throw it. that leaves you susceptible to guys like Malik Carney, Jaguar Davis, Casey Sales, Mohamed Diallo, all those, the whole cast of characters on the Ticats defense. Those guys are going to have a little bit extra time to get to them, and Ottawa showed that with the 6 sacks that they had week 1. I think that's one of those things where, Corey, you're talking about just being able to put out that fire. Well, listen, you get a quarterback sack on first or second down. That is a huge play. So there you go. There's your firefighters right up front on that D-line.
Yeah, they might be part-time firefighters, part-time arsonists starting some fires of their own. But you know what? I do think that is a complimentary matchup because Montreal right now very much is living by the big play. They scored 1 touchdown in their first game, hit 4 field goals. Their touchdown was on a quarterback sneak. Now, that doesn't mean they had a shortage of big plays. Both Austin Mack had a 61-yard reception and Keon Julian Grant had a 51-yard reception. Not to mention that in the return game, Chandler Worthy also had a 64-yard punt return. Now, all of these things could be considered sudden change, right? They're just a sudden change of field position or just one big play where, you know, the quarterback and an offensive coordinator are thinking about one type of strategy, and then all of a sudden the field flips completely. Now we're looking at this different because now we're in scoring range. So I think you have to be cognizant of what this Montreal offense brings. They still have William Stanback, who he had a very pedestrian first game, to call it what it is, 16 rushes for 42 yards, but that doesn't change who he is. Like, he's still a punishing back who will, you know, put his nose in there and fight for those hard yards. So you have to pay him his respect. And overall, I think you just have to understand where the weapons are or who can hurt you at what time. And you can't fall asleep at the wheel against this offense because they will hurt you if you allow them to. Speaking of hurting offenses, a guy that I'd like to say, you know, we know and love, Ciante Evans, part of that Montreal defense. He started his year on fire. He has 2 interceptions. A quiet leader, veteran, he played in Calgary, played in Hamilton, now in Montreal as well. What is he, you know, what do you have to think about against Ciante in the game plan? What is he like as, you know, an opponent? We know what he's like as a teammate. What is he like as an opponent?
Yeah, the one thing that stands out for me with Ciante, and the reason it doesn't surprise me that he had 2 interceptions, is he's seen pretty much every route combination at this point, right? So he kind of understands what offenses are trying to do to him, especially when he's in one of those low zones, right? And he sees, you know, maybe a 1-yard out route in front of him, something that's right in front of his face. Well, if you've played long enough, you know that something's behind you, right? They're trying to get you to take the cheese on that 1-yard route and throw a 12-yard route behind you. Ciante knows that, and he hides how he knows that. So then a quarterback thinks, I have it. Oh, yeah, there it is. Then all of a sudden, boom, there's Ciante, interception, right? You saw that week 1. I think when you know, Ciante, he's going to be a sure tackler as well. I think every single time they want to check that down or get it out into the flats, he's coming down and make that tackle. But bigger picture than just Ciante, this Montreal defensive back group is a good group. I'll give the credit where credit's due, right? Marc Ducroix has really kind of stood out as one of the better safeties as of late, right? Tunde, obviously the best in the league, but Marc Ducroix getting right back there, getting close. And then Wesley Sutton and Ciante Evans both at the half. That's a good middle group there, right? With Najee Harris kind of taken over to that Sam position. Inside for those halves and the free and the Sam, there's a lot of action that goes on there, right? You're involved in the run. You have to then come in and try to make tackles on the running back. And when they're running downfield, that's the easiest throw for the quarterback, is right in the middle. So Montreal does have a good defensive back crew, and it will be a good test for, like you said, that really good receiving crew and Matthew Schultz to test these guys and Ciante Evans.
Yeah, I like Ducroix's game. He's a rangy guy. You know, he gets around the ball. Like, more than anything, that's what I noticed. Like, he gets around the ball. He covers a lot of grass. And speaking of grass, if your lawn needs a little love, make sure you listen to Ticats pregame before every home game this season for your chance to win a Greenworks 80-volt 21-inch power push mower and a 16-inch string trimmer, courtesy of Greenworks. Listen for the keyword and go to ticats.ca/greenworks to enter. Maybe you will be that one lucky listener. Or you could just go online and buy one right now if your lawn needs some serious love. Mike, I feel like this game is pretty self-explanatory. It's early in the season. We know what's at stake. This is an East Division game, and later in the year, these ones almost count for double. So right now, as we're going into this one, it's Montreal's second game, the Ticats' third game. It's their home opener. Speedy B's going to be there. Let's just talk about what we really need to focus on and watch to determine what's going to be the outcome of this game. Where's your ISO cam going to be in this game?
Yeah, and good point to bring up the East Division matchups. Everybody in the East Division knows that it comes down to one or two games at the end of the season. So yeah, it's early in the season like this, but it's also a really big game, right? Because like we said, when it comes down to that playoff seeding and it's one game away, like these are huge games. So to be, lose to Toronto, okay, learn from that, but at least to get on top of Montreal here and put yourself ahead of them there, it's massive. But the one thing I'm looking at, and you touched on it a little bit, is Chandler Worthy versus Lawrence Woods, who has now returned, right? We all know what Lawrence Woods can do, and Chandler Worthy has been a really good returner, and that Montreal special teams and defense that last game really won them that game, right? I'm expecting to see that battle really determine who's going to end up winning this game, right? When you talk about two offenses that are somewhat struggling, we've talked about this before, Court, the biggest thing you can get to spark that offense is a big return to put you in scoring position right away and have opportunity for points. So that's my ISO cam, and I'm always going to be a little biased to those special teams, but Lawrence Woods because of the big playability and Chandler Worthy. How about you? What are you looking for?
Man, it's hard to argue with it there. Early on, I was really thinking about the return, or I should say the debut of one Richie Sindani, a guy who over the last 3 years, he's averaged somewhere in the neighborhood of 23 or 24 receptions. Hasn't had the crazy numbers, but I think could be poised for somewhat of a late breakout year. And at the same time, almost completely opposite to that, I'm going to be watching Noel Thorpe in this game because he's a great defensive mind in the CFL. He's known for bringing pressure, and if you flash back to last year, the Ticats played their last game in Montreal, and it was the Montreal defense that was really giving the Ticats some issues, and there's certain people who are involved in that. Noel Thorpe knows how to dial up a cover zero as good as any of them, and a good friend of mine, Chris Aki, a Laurier guy, he played in that defense for a long time, and I just, from watching him, I came to respect the game that Noel Thorpe calls. So it will be a really good battle between Tommy Condell and Noel Thorpe. I think if he dials up pressure and it gets to Matt Schiltz, that will make it tough for this offense. On the contrary, if Matt can crack the code, get past that first line, there's a lot of green space for his playmakers to make big plays. And big plays they will make, because I'm speaking it into existence right now. 7:30 kickoff at the Donut Box. That's Tim Hortons Field for those who are not familiar. And if you've liked what you've heard today, please do us all a favor at the Ticats Audio Network and hit the subscribe button on your favorite podcast player. And if you're only listening, then check us out on YouTube too, because now we got video, baby. We've got the video as well. So if you're going to be at the stadium, I will see you there later. And if not, make sure you tune in to listen.ticats.ca. RJ and Luke have got the call. Bubba and Andy got you on the pregame up next. And until next game, hope you have a happy game day.
It's game day and you're ready. So are we. Let us know your thoughts. Email us at gameday@ticats.ca. Courtney Stephen and Mike Daly are here every game day with their insights into today's game. Subscribe to the Ticats Audio Network on Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts.